All right, let's head to one of the most incredible places on Earth, the stunning Fynbos biome of South Africa. It's this world brimming with unique plants and birds. But there's a problem. This vibrant world is being broken apart. And that brings us to a really crucial question, not just for the Fynbos, but for conservation everywhere. When a huge natural landscape gets chopped up into little pieces, can those tiny leftover fragments actually still be real homes for birds? So to answer that, we've got to understand the scale of the problem. We're diving into the shrinking world of the Fynbos and the biggest challenge it faces, habitat fragmentation. Now, what is habitat fragmentation? Well, imagine a giant, beautiful puzzle all put together. Fragmentation is like someone sweeping across the table, knocking pieces away, leaving just small, scattered clusters behind. It's a big habitat getting shattered into little isolated islands, usually by things we do, like building farms, planting forests, or expanding cities. And listen, this is a huge deal here, because the Cape Floristic region, where you find the Fynbos, is a global biodiversity hotspot. That's a fancy way of saying it has a mind-blowing concentration of unique species that exist nowhere else on the planet. So, fragmentation here isn't just a local issue, it's a threat to the world's natural heritage. So, how on earth do you study something like this? Well, scientists designed a really clever natural experiment. Let's call it the three-patch test. It's all about comparing different types of landscapes to see what secrets they're hiding. The basic idea was to compare the bird communities living in three very different kinds of Fynbos landscapes. Each one tells a totally different story about what it means to be isolated. Okay, so here's the setup. First, you've got the mainland. This is our baseline, big, continuous, pristine Fynbos. Second, you have natural islands. These are ancient patches, isolated thousands of years ago when forests expanded around them. And third, you have the artificial fragments, the new kids on the block, created recently by farms and plantations. So we're comparing pristine habitat against both ancient and modern isolation. A fantastic setup. And by comparing these three landscapes, the researchers uncovered some absolutely fascinating and frankly pretty unexpected secrets about how birds manage to survive. This leads us to a fundamental question in ecology. Does a smaller patch of habitat always mean you're going to find fewer bird species? I mean, it seems like common sense, right? Smaller home, fewer residents. Well, get ready for a surprise, because this graph reveals something amazing. See the orange circles? Those represent the ancient natural islands. As the patch area gets smaller, moving from right to left, the number of bird species drops. That's a classic ecological rule. But now, look at the green triangles. Those are the recent man-made fragments. For birds, that line is almost flat. The relationship just disappears. The size of the patch didn't seem to matter for the number of species. That is a huge discovery. So, let's be crystal clear. In these modern human-made fragments, the sheer size of the patch wasn't the make-or-break factor for bird survival. Which, of course, begs the question, what on earth is going on here? It seems like there are a few key reasons. First, the landscape around the fragments, the farms, and so on, they aren't total dead zones. They can actually support generalist birds, the ones who aren't too picky. Second, and this is the obvious one, birds can fly. They can use these fragments as stepping stones to hop across the whole landscape. And finally, it looks like birds haven't yet had to pay what's called an extinction debt. That's the delayed disappearance of species that can happen long after a habitat is fragmented. For now, they seem to be more resilient than the plants. The study's conclusion says it all. These fragments have real value. They serve as resource refugia and stepping stone reserves for avifauna, which is just a scientific way of saying they are vital safe havens and rest stops for the region's birds. They're not just remnants, they are active, working parts of the ecosystem. Okay, so if size isn't the whole story, what is? This brings us to a really critical tool for conservation: fire. Right? So if the size of a patch isn't the number one thing, what else determines if birds are going to thrive there? What actually makes for a quality habitat? Well, the answer lies in fire. Fynbos is a fire-adapted ecosystem, and this chart shows a comparison of bird communities in recently burned areas versus old-growth areas. Just look at the nectivores. Those are the nectar-feeding birds. The difference between young and old growth is absolutely dramatic. And just how dramatic are we talking? Well, the presence of these specialist nectar-feeding birds more than doubles in fynbos that hasn't burned for over 20 years. They completely rely on the mature flowering plants that only that old-growth habitat can provide. So here is the crucial takeaway. For certain key species, the quality of the habitat, which is directly shaped by fire cycles, can be way more important than the sheer size of the habitat patch. This all boils down to a clear three-step action plan for conservation. 1. Protect even the small patches. We now know they have incredible value. 2. Shift the focus from just size to the quality of the habitat inside. And 3. Manage fire to create a mosaic of different ages across the landscape, so there's always some of that precious mature fynbos available. And that leaves us with a final thought to take away. If these tiny, carefully managed fynbos fragments can act as such vital lifelines for birds, what other hidden havens might we be overlooking? What potential stepping stones could be right there in our own backyards, just waiting for the right kind of care?